as we try to fulfill our purposes day in and day out. What always is consistently coming our way? Trouble. Trouble is consistently coming our way. Now, we already said with the problem and the situation, we said there's two different kind of things, right? There is a reaction, and then there is a what? Response. There is a reaction, and then there's a what?
Response.
A response. Now, watch the reaction of Nehemiah. When he gets this news, go ahead and read.
And it came to pass, when I heard these words, I sat down and wept, and mourned certain days, and fasted, and prayed before the God of heaven.
Now, watch this, y'all. Watch this. And I don't want to get too deep because I'm looking at my time. Do I got a timekeeper? One second. I need somebody to tell me, hey, you let me know. So now when we're looking at this and we see the reaction of Nehemiah, he starts to mourn. You have crying, but then you have mourning. It's two different things. You face mourning when you lose a loved one. You face mourning when you are dealing with a situation to where it is out of your control. You are facing mourning where you may you may have missed a family member and you haven't seen them in a very long time, and you begin to mourn for them. How you doing, brother? But you begin to mourn for them. Now, when we are here at this point, Nehemiah is mourning. Okay? With him mourning, something has to happen. We're still staying in the thematic plunge of purpose. Nehemiah has one or two options at this time. When we go through life, how do we react to certain situations? Do we inadvertently think inside of ourselves that I can't do it? That this is not meant to happen? This is something that is in a situation to where it just cannot be done. This is something that I cannot get to. How is my reaction? Do I cry? Do I get angry? What is your thing? We all have a certain way that we react. So in your reaction, how do we come out of that? How do we come out of that? And that's a question that we have to ask ourselves all the time, is how do I come out of when I'm faced in a situation to where something bad has happened? How am I supposed to come back from that? All right? So looking at this now, watch this, y'all. Keep reading, please.
And said, I beseech thee, O Lord God of heaven, the great and terrible God, that keepeth covenant and mercy for them that love him and observe his commandments.
Now, when he says the terrible God, is that bad? No. What is that terrible in the context? That's showing what? Reverence, respect, God. So now what he does, because he sees the state that he's in. The state that he is in, he has no control over his state. He has no control over his state now. But he knows that he needs who? God. He needs God. So we got to understand that when we're going from day to day, month to month, we have to understand when we hit a situation that is not good, we have to understand that we must turn to who? God. We must turn to God. So as we look in chapter 1, what we start to see and we start to see unfold is Nehemiah having a full-on conversation, praying to God. Number one, we're going to see humility, what he does in the text. And then we're going to see how he starts to gain strength through relying and leaning on God. Go ahead and read, please.
Let thine ear now be attentive.
So he said, let thine ear. I want you to come see about me. I want you to hear from me. God, I'm reaching out to you. Go ahead and read.
And thine eyes open.
And thine eyes open.
That thou mayst hearest the prayer of thy servant.
Yeah.
Which I pray before thee now. Mm-hmm. Day and night for the children of Israel, thy servants.
So he's sitting here day and night. This is something that is pondering in his mind over and over and over. A lot of us are in cycles. Cycles. We keep dealing with the same thing over and over. And truly, legitimately, we want to break the cycle. So we say, I'm gonna fix it now. I'm gonna deal with this later. Or I'm gonna find some kind of way, maybe tomorrow, maybe next week, or maybe this is gonna get me out of my certain situation. But we have to understand that in this, what is something very peculiar that Nehemiah does? We saw his reaction, but his response comes in through prayer. We never can tap into the power of God until we pray.
Man.
When you pray to God, that is your avenue of communication to be able to go to God and be very exposed to him, because at this point, God already knows everything.
Yeah.
He just needs you to know that you need to rely on him.
Right.
You see that? So when we look at this text and we see Nehemiah's reaction from the morning, he could have stayed in his emotions. Could he have not? He could have stayed there. But what he does is he brings himself to a point where he says, I need something more than myself. I need God.
Yeah.
We've tried our methods. We've done what we can do. The children of Israel, when they were coming out of Egypt, they were known for being hard-headed. They did not follow the commandments of God. Even up until this present point, they were not in right relationship with God. So what Nehemiah is doing is he is praying on the behalf of something that is way on in his heart to God. But he tries and he moves in a different method. But how do I change my methods? What do I do? We already said if we normally cry, if we normally get angry, if we normally cuss, if we normally do certain things to release what is in our hearts, when you take something out, you always have to replace it.
Yeah.
You have to in your heart. So whenever you change your habit, you lay in your bed a certain way, you tie your shoes a certain way. Think about it. We have former athletes in here, football players, track. What is something that you had to do to get better? You had to practice. You had to practice. I was watching Kobe. I was listening to Kobe in the interview. When he was in high school, right? He was on a different level than when he went to the pros. What he did in high school practice, he could not translate that to the pros. Why? It's a different level and it's a higher level.
Yeah.
It's a higher level. When God's taking you to a higher level, you must put a certain kind of practice on a higher level. As God elevates you, you must pull closer to him.
Right.
God had to take Nehemiah through a process. If Nehemiah didn't go through his process, he would never be able to fulfill his purpose. When Nehemiah was praying to God, God didn't give him what he needed right off the bat. Because when you give a child candy, if they're crying for it, they're going to keep doing what to get that candy?
Crying.
They're going to cry for it. Because they see that worked. But there comes a time where a child has to talk.
Man.
You have to practice talking. And with that talking, I want candy. You formulate that, and that is what you receive.
Man.
Now, looking at this now, Nehemiah is in Nisan. Where is he at? Go ahead and read.
In the 20th year of Artaxerxes the king,
All right, go ahead and read.
that wine was before him.
Now look at this. Wine was before him. Nehemiah, his role, he's a cupbearer for the king. He's a cupbearer. Anybody know what a cupbearer is? He is the front line for anything from the consumption of wine. That's what he must drink before the king drinks it. Because back in those times, they would poison kings. They would try to do certain things to the king to get to him, to dethrone him from his reign. Nehemiah plays a very pivotal, very important position right now. Why am I bringing that up? Through your practicing, through your process, as you start to humble yourself in God, he starts to position you where you need to go.
Amen.
Your practice starts to unravel your purpose.
Come on.
All right? And he gets you to the point where you see the providential hand of God starting to work. So he starts to position you in the way that you need to be. Nehemiah is in the palace. Now watch this, y'all. The rest of his people, where are they? They're scattered. Some are captive, some are killed. Some, they are facing oppression right now. It is not good times for the Jews. Now, him being in this process, he's consistently praying. He's staying consistently yoked with God. He's staying with him through the process. All right? So let's keep reading. Let's keep reading. Let's see this unravel. Go ahead and read.
And I took up the wine and gave it into the king. Now I had not been before time sad in his presence.
Watch this.
Wherefore the king said unto me, Why hast thou countenance sad, seeing thou art not sick? This is nothing else but sorrow of heart.
Watch this, brother. Pause real quick for me. Now, looking at that, he had never, Nehemiah, been sad in the king's presence before. Why is it very important for him to keep a good face? Because he's the what? What is his role?
Cupbearer.
He's the cupbearer. So if his face is toe up, that means something's wrong with the what?
With the cup.
With the cup. So it's important for him to keep his position. We have to really look at this. Use your spiritual imagination. When you look at it, the king has to have some kind of trust in who?
Cupbearer.
In the cupbearer, Nehemiah. They have some kind of relationship, okay? So the king is watching Nehemiah. Nehemiah's watching the king. The king seeing Nehemiah's face tore up. He's like, what you sad for? What your face tore up for? that's what he's like, because you ain't never been sad before. What's going on with you?
Right.
Are you sick? So it's one of those things, all right? So looking at that, he's saying you have never been sad. This has to be nothing but sorrow of heart. Now, we're going back to whenever you feel like you cannot fulfill your purpose. Now, me included, we can get into ourselves and we can stay in that sorrow. Now, Nehemiah, even though he is going through his process, what's going on with his kinsmen is still weighing on his heart. It's been how many months since now? 5 months. It has been, up until this point, he's still dealing with the same situation. Still dealing with the same situation. With him dealing with this situation, he is at a point to where he doesn't know, really, he's just going through. He's staying humble. I don't know why I'm here, but I'm going to just keep going. I'm going to keep pushing through. You may not know why you're working that job, but stay humble. Keep pushing. Keep pushing through. I don't know why I'm dealing with these people at work, but keep pushing. Keep pushing through, okay? I don't know why I'm getting all this work put on me. Keep pushing.
Man.
Keep staying humble. Keep pushing through. Because it's going to be an expected end at the end of it if you just keep holding on to God.
Right.
It seems very simplistic, but even in Scripture, you have to be strong in the Lord.
Yeah.
You don't have to fight your battles. Ephesians 6:10, be strong in the Lord.
Man.
He's not saying you got to be strong by yourself. Be strong in who?
The Lord.
In the Lord. Be strong in him, and he will actually direct your steps where you need to go. You must be strong in God. We have to understand we have a relationship with him. Relationship is very important. You must have a relationship with God. It goes back to what we said with prayer. I can never know this brother or this sister until I what?
Talk to him.
I have to communicate with them.
Right.
I have to communicate. Communication is essential. It's essential to what you're going to do in your life. Let's keep reading, and we got to keep going.
Then I was so afraid, and said unto the king, let the king live forever.
All right, watch this. Why is he afraid?
Talking to the king.
He's talking to the king. Him being in this position, yes, I have a relationship with the king, but still, my countrymen are scattered. I'm still in a position where something can happen to me like that. But through this process that Nehemiah and God have been working through, this is the point where he is in a very pertinent position. And he can do one or two things here. He's been asked a question from the king. All right, keep going.
And I said unto the king, let the king live forever.
Let the king live forever.
Why should not my countenance be sad when the city, the place of my father's speculars, lieth waste, and the gates thereof are consumed with fire?
Watch this. Watch this. He is laying the account of his heart on the king. He is letting the king know what he has been dealing with in his heart all night, all day, letting him know this is what's going on. That takes courage.
Man.
When you step out on faith, that takes a certain amount of courage.
Man.
But he could never reach that amount of courage until he went through the process.
Yeah.
You see where I'm going with this? You have to stay in the process with God. Because at that point, if Nehemiah didn't actually walk and stay in God's way, he would have never had the courage.
Right.
He wouldn't have had it. Because he wouldn't have known who to be strong in. Because in himself, he was mourning in himself. The words that he needed, even God gave the words to Moses when he needed them. Moses had a speech impediment. He couldn't talk. He stuttered a lot. But God provided for him.
Man.
All right? Even when Jonah didn't know what to say to the people in Nineveh, God provided the words for him.
Man.
God will provide the words that you need at the time you need it. Just stay in subject to him. That's what we must do. Us as Christians, what we must understand and what we must realize is this walk that we are walking is bigger than ourselves. It's bigger than us. Because whether you realize it or not, someone is watching you daily. Daily. They're seeing how you react. They want to see, because someone in normality, if they have an issue with somebody, they're going to take it upon themselves to let you know how they feel.
Right.
They're going to let you know that. But if you react in a different way, if someone flat out disrespects you, and you yourself, I'm not saying get slapped and say God bless you, but I'm saying what you must do is react in a way to where you are not being an advocate for chaos.
Man.
Your number one obligation as a Christian is to be a peacemaker.
Amen.
How am I going to advocate for peace? How am I going to mend relationships? How am I going to be a light? I have to be a light. That is what I have to do. That is what I have commissioned myself to do when I was baptized. I brought that among myself.
Man.
So when I look at things and you think about it yourself, you have to get personal with yourself. You got to get an exclusive relationship with God, but you got to get personal with yourself.
Amen.
Talk to yourself. What am I struggling with? Because there's a reason why you can't get out of bed every day. Because you're dealing with something in your heart. Nobody knows what it is, but you're dealing with it. It's the same thing in the text, church. Nehemiah was dealing with something. Do you not think there were sometimes he couldn't get out of bed? There were times where he was staying up all night long because his mind was on the people.
Man.
But you have to remember your positioning. It goes back to positioning. Because even with Joseph, the story in the life of Joseph wasn't even about Joseph. It was protecting the seed promise. We know what the seed promise is, right?
Jesus.
It's Jesus. Throughout the whole Old Testament, that is what the Old Testament is. It is a consistent battle between God and Satan trying to destroy the seed promise, which is Jesus, which comes in the New Testament. But if Joseph himself, from the pit to the prison to the palace, if he did not actually humble himself, his family, which was where? In Canaan, they would have actually they would have perished from the famine.
Amen.
Because you remember when he was actually in the prison, he was called forward to who? To Pharaoh. And he was told to actually tell me what this vision means, because Pharaoh had something on his heart.
Amen.
But he recognized from the gift and the purpose that he was actually having to walk through Joseph. He said, you know what? I'm not going to think about this as myself, because my brothers, they betrayed me. My family betrayed me. Every time you lift me up, God, I keep getting knocked back down. And I'll be taking it a step further. Some of us inadvertently get angry with God, because you get and you see the horizon. I see, oh, it's coming. It's here. God, you about to give me this promotion. And then I'm fired the next day. That doesn't make sense. But Joseph himself humbled himself. And through his humbleness, he became elevated in such a way that he protected his family, but he protected what was coming.
Man.
Something that saved me, you, and everyone in this room.
Man.
That we can sit here and talk about God.
Yeah.
Talk about Jesus. Spread what is really the good news. That is purpose in itself. There is a track record of how God has provided, prepared, and made sure that you were in the right position to be where you needed to be. That is the internal battle that takes place. This is just the internal battle. We're not talking about just the exterior. This is from within your own mind, what you wrestle with, what we wrestle with on a daily basis.
Yeah.
We wrestle with it. And we wrestle and we try to make sense of things all the time. But we already mentioned it earlier. We have to be strong in the Lord. Be strong in Him. A lot of our issues wouldn't be looked at as issues if we have a relationship with Him. Because we would say, oh, God got it. He got it. I don't have to worry about what someone may do, someone may say, because at the end of the day, it really doesn't matter. Do not give value to pain just for the day. Because if you give value to the pain of just the day, then what ends up happening is you are putting all of your energy in something that God never purposed for you.
Right.
If you do that, and if you sit there and you mingle in that purpose, that is what we are dealing with, is a cycle. That's how you end up in that cycle. Satan is actually he studies you. And he tries to figure out what your weakness is. You know what temptation is? What is temptation? Temptation is where Satan takes your weakness and he finds an opportunity and he brings it together to give you temptation.
Man.
He knows. This is why it's so important to make sure that you are honest with yourself, so you can recognize that is my weakness. And Satan is trying to line me up with an opportunity so that I can trip and not be able to get to my full potential. On the journey, there's different people that doubt him on his road to Jerusalem. People that say you're trying to go against the king. His name is starting to get slandered. He's being talked about. All these different things. But he's got the tunnel vision. He stays with God. And he keeps going. And he sees this. And he says, you know what? I'm going to block everything out. Because nothing else matters but the purpose that God has for me. Man. Romans 8:28 says, for we know all things work together for what? For the good. For them that are what? Called according to what? His purpose. Child of God, you have to recognize that you are walking in His purpose. Remind yourself of that. I'm walking in His purpose, not mine. Not my purpose. Not what I want to do. Because what I want to do is be comfortable. God don't want you to be comfortable. He wants you to grow. Growth takes strain. Whenever you make a diamond, it's heat and pressure. When you grow a plant, it grows in the dark, in the soil. These are certain things that happen. And you may not see it happening, but it's doing it. Amen. It's growing. It's cherishing. Something is happening on the nucleus on the inside of your heart. Amen. Don't look at it as turmoil. Look at it as a growing process.
To heal, help and restore.